Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, kicking off a pick 4 at Saratoga on Sunday with race number 5. Here's the field for the $250,000 Albany. 3-year-olds going a mile and an eighth on the dirt. We have 6 in here, and the 2 big names are the 4 Pandagate, the 6 Doc Sullivan. They just ran 1-2 in the New York Derby at Finger Lakes.
But not much separated them in the end. It was 3/4 of a length, and for Pandagate, it was his first start since returning stateside after the trip to Dubai. And in the case of Doc Sullivan, he just tried a new track. Obviously, he had been at the other tracks, the Naira tracks, but then finally made it to Finger Lakes. And I thought it was a well-meant second in terms of trip, very different from these 2 runners.
Short field, pace might make the race. We'll throw up our Timeform US pace projector. Blue bar scenario, Timeform US believes this race might favor front runners, and the 5 Liberty Central figures to be forwardly placed as he stretches out 3 furlongs from his most recent start, his first off of a layoff. Skylar Starship was the pace setter in the New York Derby before finishing 3rd behind the 2 Albany morning line favorites. He'll be close as well.
I think so. And I know the fraction's obviously a little bit slower at Finger Lakes in those mile and a 16th events, but I do think he'll be put into it early. You talked about Liberty Central. He was pretty sharp last time out. I think just now stretching out, as we've talked about, and just second start off a long layoff, he could be even more fresh.
And number 1 is Agelos the Great, and this horse didn't have the easiest trip in the New York Derby. Sort of hung wide every step of the way and then tired at the end. Should get a much better setup this time around, breaking from the rail, might be able to tuck in behind the speeds, but I think the distance is a bit of a question. He's shown some ability sprinting. A mile and an eighth is a different ballgame.
I couldn't agree more. I think my issue with him is the distance. If this was 7 furlongs, 6 furlongs, I think I would put him a little bit more into the mix, but even if you throw the race out at Finger Lakes, you go to his 1 mile event, you can see that at Belmont and Aqueduct meet over the mud. Just would have liked to see more from him. He has to face BD Saints again in this spot, and I just felt like he didn't have what it took in deep stretch to pick up some ground and kind of close in on the field. So I have some reservations, just knowing that I think others in here, at least what we've seen so far, it seems like they do like these 2 turn distances.
Skylar Starship was dismissed at a big price in the New York Derby, but he showed good speed that day and he held on to finish 3rd. They ran him after that. He was odds on and he got beaten. And that's sort of been the story of his career. He's somewhat inconsistent.
And I don't like his performance last time out. I do realize that the top 2 went 1-2 all the way around the racetrack, but he was a heavy favorite in there. He really never got going and really didn't make up a ton of ground, in my opinion. I think even more importantly, his speed figures, they decreased there. To me, it was a significant decrease. I would have liked to seen a little bit better of a number, but we'll see what he can do here. Obviously, he does have an effort at Saratoga. It was early in his career, but it was a good one.
I've always tried to make the 3 BD Saints a good horse, and I know he's winless on dirt, but he's run very well several times on the surface. Most notably was the Sleepy Hollow. It was a wet track. He didn't break very well. I think you can make the argument he was best that day because he was really running on at the end. The issue with BD Saints is himself. Sometimes he just doesn't break out of the gate. He's very, very green. And I think you have to ask yourself, is he as good this year as he was last fall?
I think my answer to that question would be no, but I'm willing to make a little bit of a case for him. I hope it's not just because of the wet track that he ran well in the Sleepy Hollow, but I do think the mile distance was part of that. When we've seen him at other times on the dirt, it's been 7/8. We've talked about him not breaking from the gate. I think if he can break okay from the gate at a mile and an eighth, I think he's an interesting horse in here. I do think he's going to offer value, and they've tried different things with him this year, but he did have that long layoff. I don't mind him getting back on the dirt.
Pandagate, the number 4, our morning line favorite, is a perfect 3 for 3 against New York breds, including this victory in the New York Derby, where he set off the pace and he was being urged along a little bit on the turn to keep up. But once he shakes 4 wide into the clear with a run, he's going to make the lead and he's going to go on with it. Doc Sullivan, I thought, was very, very game to finish second in here, but Pandagate was best, and I think the extra distance might work for him.
He was, and he had to make that big move on the outside, and you can see then I don't want to say he's struggling, but he tired a little bit, and then he kicks on again, which I liked. It's almost like he still has a little bit of learning to do, in my opinion, when you watch how he was able to run there in the stretch at the Finger Lakes. Obviously, on paper, in terms of his accomplishments, he's been able to go overseas and run well. He's the horse to beat, Dan. I don't think there's a ton to really talk about. He gets those trips. He's got a closing stride. He has what it takes, especially at this mile and an eighth distance.
Liberty Central finished behind both Pandagate and Doc Sullivan in the Gander over the winter at Aqueduct, going a one-turn mile. They sprinted him last time off a short layoff, and I think it was a good prep for this race. I expect him to show speed in here, but he is going to have to improve if he's going to beat Pandagate and Doc Sullivan. Here's Liberty Central way on the outside, going to come with a nice little late run.
Yeah, I thought this was a good effort. I don't mind him returning to the races with that sprint effort under his belt. I like that he was rolling late here. He's kind of getting a little bit all over the track in some stages, but right there, he still continues to try to catch these two in here, and he's going to pick up some momentum here late. I like him now stretching out around 2 turns. I think looking at some of his mile races, I didn't mind the effort too back at Aqueduct. I thought it was a good effort. So he's, to me, a horse to certainly use underneath at least, and I'm really curious to see how much tote action he'll take. He's 8-1. I could see him taking a little bit of play in this group.
And completing the field is the 6, Doc Sullivan. He is so consistent. He's hit the board in all 8 starts, and he ran quite well in the race we showed early on, the New York Derby, because he was involved in the start, pushing Skylar's Starship. Pandagate might have gotten the right race flow, but once contested by Pandagate in mid-stretch, he kept digging down deep. I think he could sit a good trip sitting off the speeds here and get the jump on Pandagate once again.
He stole my thunder. That's the thought, I think, with Doc Sullivan. If you think Pandagate is beatable, I think it's because Doc Sullivan's going to have the jump on him. He likes to be more forward. We've seen that the several times that they've met, and just his running style in general. He likes to be tracking the pace. And I do think there is the question at a 1.125 mile distance against this field. To me, sure, there's a little bit of speed in here, but there's no glaring speed where there's a horse that I think needs the lead to win. And I do see a situation where Doc Sullivan is pretty forward from the gate, and maybe he is near on the lead and they're setting soft fractions. And if that's the case, maybe he has something left in deep stretch.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Albany. First leg of a 50-cent. Pick 4 at Saratoga on Sunday. We're both going with the same trifecta. The 2 favorites just look very, very tough. The Clement barn has always shown a lot of confidence in Pandagate, obviously shipping him overseas to run in group races. And that last race, the New York Derby, I think it was just a good tightener for this.
Yeah, it was tough for me to go against him. I wanted to use Doc Sullivan, but then it was also the argument of they've met twice already. Pandagate's been on the winning side of both of those, and I just wonder, depending what the pace is, if Pandagate's just going to be able to show that late punch again. So on paper, he's obviously the class, but I do think Doc Sullivan, if someone's going to beat him, he's probably the most likely horse.
4625 for Ashley, 4621 for me. It's the Albany, one of several New York bred stakes races at Saratoga on Sunday. Good luck.